Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials. Hi everyone, welcome back to Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal and today we are going to be making the Lisanne shawl. Now this is an asymmetrical shaped shawl. Can be worn, of course, as a scarf. And most of the photos you're seeing here are worked in a fingering weight yarn with a 4mm hook. Now this is made up of clusters, single crochets, and chains. You can work this shawl in any weight yarn with a larger hook size, of course. Now there will be a written pattern linked in the description box below and to my Ravelry. And I do always have a standing promotion for purchasing more than one pattern. Buy 2, get 20% off, buy 3, get 30% off, and buy 4 or more and get 40% off. And today the shawl that I'm going to make for you, I'm going to be using this little bit of leftover from my Luxe Lollies cake, and this is a 4-weight yarn, and I'm going to be using a 6mm hook to show you. Okay, now the Luxe Lollies is a discontinued yarn. Something similar would be like a Lion Brand Unforgettable or Landscapes. I believe Michaels has as well a yarn that is similar to this with the sheen. Okay, so I am going to show you all of the setup rows all the way up to the rows that you would be repeating, and then you can make yours as long as you like. Now my shawl from at the longest point, from one point to the next at the increase end, is 96 inches. You can make yours shorter, you can make yours longer, but I felt that the 96 inches was a good length to be able to wrap around as a scarf. So that's why I made mine that long. Now for this, I did use 1,200 yards of a fingering weight yarn. I used the Ice Yarns Cakes Remix. It's a 50% cotton, 50% acrylic blend. This is a very similar yarn to like a Shoop Shoes Whirl, Cotton Kings from Hobie, Red Heart. It's a wrap, something similar to that. It is a gradient color changing, so the red in this goes throughout, and then the colors change through from the black at one point through the grays to the darker, from the darker grays to the lighter grays, and then that white, and then straight back to the black. All right, so go ahead and get your materials and we shall get started. In order to begin, we're going to take a slip knot, and now we're going to chain 3 into the third chain from the hook, which is the first chain that you created. We are going to place a double crochet. Now we're going to place a cluster into that same chain space. Now the clusters that we're doing are 3 partial double crochets, and then we're going to close them all off. So there's our first partial. Don't close it yet. Our second, our third, and then with 4 loops on your hook, you'll yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. Now you're going to chain 1, and we're going to put a treble crochet again right into that same first chain space. And this is what the end of your row 1 will look like. We're working from one point to the other point. So getting started on row 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now we're going to single crochet into the first stitch. Our first stitch is our treble crochet, so we're going to single crochet into that. Now we will chain 2, and we're going to single crochet into our cluster, into the top of our cluster. And then we'll place a single crochet into the first stitch, which was our first double crochet. Now we chained 3 at the beginning and worked into the first chain. That 2 chain does not count as a stitch, okay? So this is the end of your row 2. You should have 3 single crochets and 1 chain 2. Now getting started on row 3, we're going to chain 2. That does not count as a stitch here and throughout the pattern. Double crochet into your first stitch. Now into the single crochet that's on top of your cluster, we're going to put another cluster. One partial double crochet, 2 partial double crochets, and 3 partial double crochets. With 4 loops on your hook, you will yarn over and pull through all of your loops. Now we'll chain 2. We're going to skip our chain 2 space, and working into our last single crochet, we're going to place a cluster. One partial, 2 partials, 3 partials. Yarn over, pull through all. Now you're going to chain 1 and treble crochet into that same stitch. And here's what your work should look like at the end of row 3. Getting started on row 4, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, single crochet into the first stitch, which is that treble, chain 2, single crochet into the top of your cluster, chain 2, single crochet into the top of the next cluster, and then we're going to single crochet into that last stitch, which is a double crochet. And here's what your work should look like at the end of row 4. Getting started on row 5, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, double crochet into our first single crochet, and cluster into our next single crochet. Pull through all loops, chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet. Chain 2, and now we'll cluster into our last single crochet. And now we'll chain 1 and treble crochet into that same single crochet. And here's what your work should look like at the end of row 5. Getting started on row 6. Row 6 and row 7 are going to be our repeat rows. So chain 1, turn your work, and we will single crochet into the first stitch, which is our treble, chain 2, single crochet into our cluster. Now that's your repeat across. Chain 2, single crochet into the next cluster. Chain 2, single crochet into the next cluster. So you'll chain 2 and you'll single crochet into the next cluster all the way across your work. And when you get to the end, you should have 1 stitch left, and we'll place a single crochet into that stitch as well. Row 7 is the next repeat row, so we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. We're going to double crochet into that first single crochet. Straight from there, we're going to cluster into the next single crochet. One partial, 2 partial, 3 partial. Pull through all. Your repeat for this row is to chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet, and you'll do that into every single crochet to the end of the row. Chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet, chain 2, and when you get to the last single crochet, we're going to cluster, chain 1, and treble crochet all into that last single crochet. And this is what the end of your row 7 will look like. So you're going to repeat rows 6 and 7 until you get the desired size that you want. Now I'll show you that repeat one more time. Chain 1, turn your work. This is repeating row 6, single crochet into the first stitch, and your repeat is to chain 2, single crochet into each cluster. Chain 2, single crochet into the next cluster, chain 2, single crochet into the next cluster, chain 2, single crochet all the way till you reach the last cluster, and your last stitch will be a single crochet into the last double crochet. I'm showing you row 7 again. We'll chain 2 and turn our work, double crochet into the first stitch, cluster into the next. From here, your repeat is to chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet all the way until you reach the last single crochet of the row. Chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet, all the way until you reach your last single crochet. When you reach your last single crochet, you should have a cluster, a chain 1, and a treble crochet. So cluster, chain 1, and a treble crochet. So you're going to repeat rows 6 and 7 until your long side would be this side here, okay? Until your long side reaches approximately 90 inches long. And we're going to end on a row 6 before we do the final row. So your row 6 is your single crochet row. So I'm going to work one more single crochet row and I will show you the border. Okay, so your final row in your border, let me show you how that's going to go. You're going to chain 1 and turn your work, single crochet into your first stitch, chain 1, skip your next single crochet, and we're going to place 2 single crochets into our chain 2 space. Chain 1, skip your single crochet, 2 single crochets into your chain 2 space, chain 1, skip your single crochet, 2 single crochets into your chain 2 space. You're going to do that all the way down. And when you get to your last chain 2 space, we'll single crochet into that last stitch. You can fasten off and cut your yarn, and yours will look just like this, but of course much, much bigger than mine. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under Jolie Knots Crochet. I do have a Jolie Knots Crochet community on Facebook. Join us and show us what you've created.